from a system. Oh, of course. And good evening. It's time to be reasonable. And if you haven't been smacked with the cold or COVID or whatever it happens to be, I know a lot of my friends have been hit with COVID recently, Omicron style. And I haven't been able to check because the place where I have to get tested is not accepting, or the scheduling would be a long time. So basically, unless you have symptoms that are, where you might need to go to the hospital or something like that, they're not testing at the moment. So I've just been under advisory and just kept to myself, like I tend to be honest with you, because I just go out for treatment, and that's about it. So, yeah. So anyway, tonight it's going to be pretty chill. Just talk about a couple things. Um, One thing that's in the news that I thought was very interesting is that Mark Cuban, who I happen to really like, I think he's I watched him a lot on Shark Tank, and he always seems like he's got a pretty level head. Sometimes he pushes deals in a way that some people might not like, things like that. But one thing that I've always noticed is he's very, very against uh, people that come into the tank and want to offer, uh, you know, natural cures. Like, this is a Himalayan secret, and now we want to sell it. And it's like, well, do you have FDA proof? No. Well, then I'm not going to touch you with a 10-foot pole. That type of thing. Well, one thing, and I'm looking up the article, I may have to just use normal because I may be in Facebook jail. I don't know. Because I was looking, and it told me, hey, you can't use this feature all the time, or some weird thing. So I don't know. I don't think I'm in Facebook jail. I think it was just like I can't post in a group for a minute or something like that. I'm not sure. I think it just like somehow got overposted, which happens, and they go crazy with it. It really does. Okay. Huh. I'll have to hear what they're talking about there later. But I was looking at this story, and I'm gonna kind of go into it. I don't know much, but it sounds great, and it definitely is the kind of thing that, uh, especially with my personal beliefs, that I support, which is the market solving a problem. I think that's great. Um, yeah, it might come up, it might not. Yeah, here we are. So basically, what's happening is Mark Cuban is looking at putting together a pharmacy, and what he's going to do is that he's trying to get the lowest prices on life-saving prescriptions, and this is from Forbes. It's an online pharmacy, and it's going to provide generic drugs like basically, like a good example is, and I don't know much about this, but the leukemia drug uh, imatinib. at $47 a month compared to $9,657 retail price. So that's a huge difference in price. And I just have to say that I really appreciate him, willing to do that. That's amazing. That's something that I have to, tip my hat off to him for, because that's great. And I can't imagine somebody being against that. I'm sure somebody would be like, well, he's a billionaire, and instead of opening his pharmacy, it'd be much better if he gave if he paid way more in taxes or something like that. I don't know. Whereas if he has the wherewithal to do his own thing, he has the ability and choice to do something. To me, that's a good thing. I was flabbergasted the other day. We have some. It was on a party website, or on one of the party forums, and there was a gentleman that was talking about, I have just the same right to be within the Libertarian Party as you do, and everybody, I think, agreed. I agreed that if a group wanted to actually go and be socialist, then they could, in theory, be socialist because they would have the liberty to do so. If everybody decided that they were going to go live in a socialist commune, they'd be more than welcome to do so. Made sense to me. Then he said something that to me was very frightening. And I never thought about that someone would see it that way. You talk about property and having something that's yours. As if this is something that should be. You've never thought about what gives you the right to have something that no one else can have. And I'll be honest, I was very taken aback by that statement. Well, more taken aback than there's another statement that'll come up in the program later. But this one really surprised me. This struck me. I was like, huh. Well, I've always felt that if I went and purchased or was given something or had something, that I had a right to it, that it was mine. I never considered, nor probably would I ever consider, the idea that I would have to prove why everybody else shouldn't get the thing that is mine. It's like, to me, like when you're looking at, for instance, a commune and how that it might work, it to me seems like it could work if everybody had agreed ahead of time that this is the way that they wanted to live. But I've also heard other people within the party, or things like that, where they're like, well, we could have taxes as long as it was voluntary. The problem with that one is And even I think there's a problem with, even you probably would have the same problem with the commune. Maybe, I don't know. I don't know if this has happened in communes or not. But there's always individuality that's going to come out. And you might have 10 people that are willing to agree that we're all going to pay a tax for, I don't know, like, let's say we're just going to pay for a tax so that way we have adequate roads, garbage, and let's say defense of our houses by an independent company, something like that. So everybody might agree with that. And that might be like, okay, we're all living together, and this is in these different properties, and this is what we've agreed to voluntarily. And I'm making this small, so it's at least, you could go through it and it kind of makes some sense. But the problem with that is that if you have, say, someone who's like, I think it'd be really a good idea if our taxes went towards a garden, for instance, and then everybody would have access to this garden, and the children would have something to do. Actually, let's make it easier. Let's say it's a park. They want a park for the kids. Now, let's say you have, most of these folks are parents, but one of them is not a parent. And then it's like, all right, well, we're going to have taxes. We have these voluntary taxes. So now we're going to have a park. It's like, well, I don't want to have a park. Well, there's more of us than you. Or does it have to be, does it all have to be decided? Does everybody have to agree? If they all have to agree, then that's fine. However, I'm guessing that more than likely you wouldn't have more times to be like, oh, well, then we're just not going to do that because he doesn't want to do that. So we're good. But then it ends up being a kind of a dictatorship, because it's the people that don't want anything you have to convince, or they kind of end up holding more sway, because it's like, oh, I don't think I'm going to do that or whatever. It's like, and then do you have a creation of graph at that point? I don't know. I've just been thinking about this voluntarism, and it's just something that kind of strikes me. Now, I'm kind of at a bit of an impasse. I'd like to talk about different concepts of philosophy of liberty, but at the same time, I think it would be valuable to be an entryway where people could come and find out more about the idea of classical liberal thinking and libertarian ideas. So I'm kind of at a crossroads with that, and I don't know which way I'm going to go. To give you an example, I've been really thinking about kind of the wonk side of libertarianism. I'm going to explain what a wonk is as well. A wonk is someone that is interested in creating laws and policies. And I was basically just considering how, obviously we've been, as part of the party, we've been working to get onto government. And I think that there's some good ways to do that, to get people involved. And I think that's great. However, I also think, like, once everybody is involved, or once people have position, then the question is, how do you make these things happen? Because there's a number of things that people are like, okay, well, we need to end the drug war, we need to abolish the IRS, and we need to end all government programs. And that sounds like something that, well, I mean, I think most people realize that's not something that you can do immediately. There's going to be pushback. And I was just kind of thinking about, like, how, where do you start? Like, what policies do you start with that push things back? I mean, there's obviously the ability to vote, against things, to be like, if someone's going to make more laws, if somebody's going to make more extensions of laws, like, for instance, if you're, laws like a good example is, like, if you're shoplifting with a gang, then it's more of a penalty than if you're shoplifting normally, but you just have to enforce shoplifting. And if you enforce shoplifting, then it would take care of the problem, as opposed to, adding more sentencing, when you could just, increase the sentencing that there is, or something like that. Obviously, most libertarians will be like, oh yeah, we're not voting for that because we don't need an increase here. Or if it's like, oh, we want to spend this much more taxes, or we want to, increase this much. Or, for instance, a really silly example that actually happened, if someone says, hey, we've got $1 trillion, we have an idea, what we'll do is we'll create $1 trillion coin, and then we'll just give everybody money against that coin. So we'll just create money, and then we'll give people the money from that, and problem solved. Except for, like, all kinds of weird things, like, where are you going to keep this coin? And, how much does that increase inflation? How does that affect the debt? Obviously, then you're saying, okay, we're going to have or it was $1 trillion coin. So it's like, okay, so we're going to definitely increase spending by $1 trillion. So a libertarian would vote against that, obviously. But what legislation would a libertarian put forth to roll back things and would encourage other, senators or councilmen to work with that libertarian? And so I was just, like, kind of curious, like, what is the plan once you get into government? Because it seems to me that there should be a plan. And it's also, it kind of ends up being with, like, okay, we're running people, but could we also be running legislation? Especially, like, in California, it's pretty easy to get a proposition on the ballot, especially when you're a political organization that you're already boothing in different places throughout the year to get your message across. So it'd be pretty easy to get someone to sign petitions and start getting certain legislations going. There's ways in which to be an activist besides being a government official. So it just seems like something that I thought about. But at the same time, like, to talk about that, and then, for instance, if you're just tuning into me on YouTube and you're like, what is this that you're talking about? What is the history of it? And I want to be, so maybe what we'll do is we'll have different segments where we talk about kind of what being a classical liberal is, what libertarianism is, and like, because I've been talking about like what I believe philosophically, but also I think it would be totally acceptable to be like, and this is what the true blue, well, this is what the classical liberal believed. This is what a libertarian believes, because I think they're different to a point. I think most classical liberals didn't want to see an increase in laws or an increase in power of the government. I know Thomas Jefferson didn't. So I think we're going to do something like that. It's a new year, so obviously I'm thinking about how to best present the information. And I want this to be a comfortable place. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm yelling about, it's like, well, look at what this person did and I can't believe this, or even talking about like these people on the forums that are doing this or whatever. I just don't want to get into that. And I would like to have some guests. We've had one guest so far. Maybe two? No, we've had one. And it's something that I am definitely into. I would like to get another guest some other time. I think that'd be good. But I want to talk about something else that surprised me. And I don't know if it's libertarian, it's not going to be as important, but to me it was kind of important because sometimes I consider how I would work on my personal goals, what I believe in, if, for instance, the party changed, which I don't want to go into today exactly, but if for some reason I needed to find another place to go, then I would go towards a place that had some of the ideals that were most concerning to me. And those ideals are personal freedoms, all personal freedoms, that everybody should have those in your bedroom without anybody saying anything, the ability to basically do anything that doesn't harm anybody, all of those things, that nobody gets any say about any of that. But and as much as I do care about physical responsibility, and I do, I would tend to lean probably more towards the side that one I'm more comfortable with, just because it's where I've been. So I was looking at the possibility of maybe, if I had to go back to the Democratic Party, that's where I would go, because, like I said, they agree with that, and they also agree with my stances on the criminal justice system in most cases, except for like the dyed-in-the-wool Democrats that aren't exactly, I don't know, they're not trying to, cause any controversy, that type of thing, because there's those folks within the party for sure. But for the most part, a lot of my my concerns with trying to make sure that knowing that Black Lives Matter, respecting people, and not insulting them and making them feel bad, and open border immigration would be a little bit of a stretch. But anyway, the point is, I've thought about that. But I was surprised because a friend said that capitalism has no place in, if you believe in capitalism, then you're not a liberal, and you don't, anybody who says that they're a Democrat or a liberal or anything like that and they're a capitalist, they're wrong or they're lying or whatever. And I was surprised by that because I've just always believed that, believing in the free market and that basically the state shouldn't control the resources and that everybody else should control the resources and production and all the good things about capitalism were good on both sides of the aisle. So I was kind of surprised by that, and it took me back because I think it was a prominent Democrat that my friend was quoting, and it concerned me because I'm like, I would like options, because if this, there are circumstances where I would think, oh, I think this is a better fit, but obviously I'm a capitalist, I'm an individualist, I believe in these things, but and it also made me wonder, it's like, well, how, like, especially when we go back to the whole how are we going to affect change? I look at what groups have some of the same ideas. And I know that some of the Democrats and liberals have the ideas that they don't want to see as many foreign wars. Like, that's always been something that a lot of the Democrats and liberals have been for and agreed with. So when I'm trying to agree with them, I'm like, okay, cool. But then how do we have common ground if they don't even think that a capitalist is close to them or that they're anathema? So these thoughts go in around my mind. And so next week we'll talk more. And but it is actually, I think, you know what? I'm going to give it one more minute because we took a minute in. So I'm going to give it one more minute. But I wanted to say thanks for tuning in. And this year, like I said, we'll have more guests. We're definitely going to have some segments talking about, if you want to find out more about just philosophical ideas and concepts, then this is where you'll be able to go. And one other thing that I've said is, if you, another thing that we may have, because I found out about this, I'm doing this with some of my other shows, is we might have giveaways. And so we might have giveaways because one thing that I work on is I have a lot of different things. Like, we have some books and we have some things that we could give away. And so yeah, so we might have some giveaways, and definitely be talking about just different philosophies. And we're going to have some folks on the program so that I'm not just talking to myself, talking to you. And I think it'll all be really awesome. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Now is the time to be reasonable. Now, while I'm trying to end the broadcast, I'll keep talking because there's some things that you might want to know about. I don't know. Has anybody heard about the telescope? I thought that was really cool.